Morning everybody, it is day 18 of our month of daily language diaries, and don't freak out, I'm changing it up today. Got a nice new ceramic mug. I just love the shape and the proportions of it, but that's not important. Let's jump into a daily question. Frankly, it is important because these mugs are sort of a daily fixture of this show. I digress. Sophia Duran writes in, do you have dreams in the languages you've learned? Have you ever had a dream that had more than one? So to me, this always, for some reason, sort of overlaps a bit with this idea of thinking in different languages. But I feel like dreaming in a different language is particularly interesting and sort of mysterious because of the nature of dreams themselves and this idea of how much control do we really have over them. I think on a day-to-day basis, it certainly feels like we don't really have a whole lot of control over what we dream about. That's a whole discussion in and of itself. But I think the reason why this idea of dreaming in foreign languages is so interesting, but it's quite a nice sort of discussion because it feels a bit like for that to happen, that new language must really be coming a part of your sort of subconscious. It must really be sort of becoming a part of who you are. And I think the first time it happens, it can really be quite a pleasant surprise. And I know for me, I was doing some sort of dream journaling at a certain point because I wanted to be able to remember these and I wanted to keep track of the first time this happened and like, was it going to start happening more and more often? And what did I dream about? Were there certain themes? Like would I dream about the same things very often in French versus a totally different set of things in Japanese? Now for me, both thinking in different languages and also dreaming in different languages, it often has really depended on the activities I was doing quite recently. So I found that if I was speaking a ton of French one day, or certainly if I was in France and just completely immersed in all sorts of experiences, then I certainly found I'm much more likely to actually dream in that language. Especially things where I have a particular emotionally deep attachment. So for example, perhaps just studying a textbook and going through a bunch of practice dialogues in French. I am engaging with French, but it's quite different than the type of emotional attachment I'm going to have with a podcast or a movie, especially if I'm doing some sort of interactive and intensive study of those materials. And again, if I'm actually living the language, if I'm on location in France, or if I'm just with a group of friends or whatever it might be, and I'm living real experiences in the language, then again, the emotional attachment is a lot stronger. And for me, it's this emotional attachment to a particular experience that happened to me recently that tends to really impact the outcome in terms of me dreaming in that language. And likewise, I found in terms of dreaming in multiple languages in the same night, or even in the same dream, I found that this was a lot more common back when I was studying and interacting with a lot more languages on a daily basis. Because back when I was actually running my business, teaching languages every day, and that was also a time where languages were just the biggest passion in my life and they kind of just took over everything. And so during that time, it was very common for me to be teaching 3 or 4 different languages in a single day, but I would also be actively studying like 4 or 5 languages in a single day. And all throughout the week, I was just constantly active with all of my languages, even if I wasn't actually speaking them with people in sort of real life conversations or scenarios. I really was just always active. And I was also constantly reading books, watching movies, listening to music. The level of sort of emotional engagement with those languages was so high. And I also think that routine plays into this too. So even doing pretty simple activities, such as when I used to have my huge playlist of easy German episodes that we talked about in my episode on building fluency, you might think that, okay, that becomes kind of just a mundane thing. I go out, take a walk, and I just listen to these same things. But that routine of walking around my neighborhood in my hometown in the UK, next to the little stream with all the ducks, and I would sit on a bench and take a pause. That routine itself became very special to me, and I have an emotional attachment to that as well. So I think as I'm sort of talking this through on camera in real time on this daily diary episode, I'm kind of realizing that I think if you want to sort of inspire dreams in yourself in different languages that you're learning, I think that you can try to do activities, especially perhaps in the evening, that you feel in some way emotionally attached to, that have some sort of emotional relevance to you. So nowadays, things are quite different for me. So I have a full-time job that is not related to languages at all, at least not human languages. And I also have these huge projects outside of work that are all language related, but they're not actually studying languages. They're things like designing and building software like Journaly for all of you, writing blog posts, or working on new articles, working on branding for new things I have coming out, working on my second book. And on top of all of that, I am constantly studying things. So as I've mentioned a few times now, I'm taking this huge set of data science courses, which I'm really loving. And very often I'll still be studying things that I need to learn in order to build something really, really cool for Journaly. And so then I have to factor in my language learning on top of all of that, not to mention this YouTube channel. So nowadays I rely very heavily on special systems that I carefully designed myself, such as the sort of 3-tier hierarchy of prioritization system that I mentioned to you guys recently, where I have certain activities that are tier 1, which I do every single day and I find time for that. But then maybe I have certain languages, for example, that I'm just maintaining and they're not my top priority, let's say French and Italian. So perhaps I will actually do those every day, but I'll switch out. And so I won't do both languages every single day. And then tier 3 are things that are lower priority for me and that I only do when I can make time for them. So again, I'll do a whole video all about that system for you. I mention it here because what that means is I don't interact with as many languages on a daily basis anymore. It tends to be a little bit more segmented. And so I do find that I have a lot less dreams that are in multiple foreign languages now. One last really fun thing I'll mention here is that it was quite a surprise to me over the years to realize that it's not just about, did I speak that language specifically, or did I engage in some emotionally sort of deep activity in that language specifically. I find that this sort of idea of association is very powerful when it comes to both thinking and dreaming in foreign languages. And so sometimes, let's say I watch a documentary or a movie which is set in Japan or it's about Japan, I associate so deeply and so strongly with Japan after all the experiences that I've had with the language and also living there and working there and studying there, that this alone by association can trigger me to start thinking in Japanese or even have dreams in Japanese. Okay, I think that was a really pleasant discussion. I hope that was helpful and maybe interesting to hear about some of my experiences dreaming in different languages and a little bit of advice that, you know, if you want to achieve this yourself and work towards having dreams in different languages, first of all, I would recommend having a little notebook by your bed. So the first time it happens, it can be really fun to write that down and just kind of keep a little diary and see if it's happening more and more frequently. Maybe even keep track of the things that you did the night before and see if there's a correlation there as well. And then, like I said, doing things perhaps in the evening that are very pleasant, that have an emotional attachment for you, things like reading a book or watching a movie or listening to a podcast or any of these things, things that really feel just like, that make you feel just good inside. But I think this is very subjective and it could be very person to person. So I would love to hear your experiences. And Sophia, please let me know if you have had this experience dreaming in different languages, like Scottish Gaelic, for example. I know you're learning that. Yeah, I really look forward to reading the comments on this one. So cheers, have a wonderful Thursday. I'll see you back here tomorrow for another episode of our Daily Language Diary.